In a world marked by scarcity, doubt, and fear, there exists an eternal truth, an inexhaustible source that many have forgotten, yet has never ceased to flow. God as supply. This is not a theological concept nor an abstract idea. It is a living force, quietly operating in the heart of your being. A power that not only hears your prayers but answers them, opening the windows of heaven. In this transformative text, based on the timeless teachings of Florence Scovel Shinn, you will discover that the universe is filled with provision, waiting to be claimed by you. Not by merit, not by effort, but by consciousness. Prepare to hear not just words, but decrees of power. Each phrase is a key. Each affirmation a spark that can ignite the sleeping faith within you. This is a call to those ready to leave struggle behind and embrace grace. To those who understand that God is not far away, but within you, waiting for you to recognize your divine right to receive, to live in abundance, to be free. This is the moment. Heaven is not closed, the windows are open, and the provision is already on its way. Welcome to God as Supply, opening the windows of heaven. Your journey to divine abundance begins now. There are those who live waiting for the right moment, the perfect opportunity, the favor of destiny, without knowing that true provision is not found in the ups and downs of this changing world, but in the inner recognition of an eternal truth. God is your supply. Not sometimes, not when everything is going well, not when your pocket is full or the contract has been signed, but always, immutable, silent, generous, like the sun that shines on both the just and the unjust. I write these lines with deep love for all those souls who have been deceived by appearances, who have believed that scarcity is real, that good is scarce, or that the doors are closed. I have been sought many times by people discouraged by a lack of money, opportunities, or provision, and I have firmly repeated to them, as if handing them a golden key. God is your provider. Do not fear. The channel may change, but the source remains. This book arises from the need to proclaim this truth clearly, simply, and powerfully, as it must be spoken when it comes to spiritual matters. I will not speak here of theories, but of laws, spiritual laws as precise as gravity, laws that can be applied by anyone who has faith and the will to be guided by the divine principle that governs life. I have seen checks appear where there seemed to be no possibility at all. I have seen bank accounts healed with the same faith with which a sick body is healed. I have seen doors open with a simple affirmation spoken with certainty, such as, "Who knows that God never forgets his children, and that all good has already been given from the beginning of time?" The question is not whether God will give to you, but whether you can receive, because good is not withheld, it is waiting to be recognized. I am not writing for those who seek formulas of chance or mental enchantments. I write for those who wish to understand the law of their being, for those who want to become clear channels of infinite abundance, for those who are tired of fearing tomorrow and desire to rest in the eternal promise, "I will provide." Whoever understands that God is their minister will no longer ask from lack, but will declare from possession. For the well-spoken word is the magic wand that transforms clay into gold, debt into provision, the beggar into a king. This is not arrogance. It is obedience to a higher law that says, "According to your faith, it will be done unto you." This book does not intend to give empty formulas or vain promises. It is an invitation to change your consciousness, to stop looking to the world as the source of your goods, and to begin looking upwards, where there is no scarcity, where there is no delay, where supply flows freely to those who know how to affirm it with the word and sustain it with the heart. Each chapter will be a step on the ladder of wealth consciousness, not a wealth limited to coins and property, but that abundance that fills the soul with peace, that opens paths where there were none, that transforms need into gratitude and doubt into certainty. The windows of heaven are ready to open. Are you ready to receive? Then begin the journey. Faith is your ticket, the word your key, and the Spirit your guide. God is your supply. Never forget this. God as supply, opening the windows of heaven, by Florence Scovel Shinn. We have noticed that more than 80% of those visiting our channel are not subscribed. You can support this project by pressing the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1, The Inexhaustible Source. Everything you need is already given. Learning to receive what is already yours by divine right. We live in a generous universe, I affirm this with the certainty of one who has witnessed again and again the infallible response of spiritual law when invoked with faith. Life is not a struggle to survive, but an art of receiving what has already been given. The secret lies in understanding that what we call supply does not come from the outside, nor from the goodwill of people, nor from the uncertain whims of fate, but from the invisible principle that sustains and governs all, God, the inexhaustible source. Many believe they must work harder, strive more, sacrifice more to receive something from this world. They have been educated to believe that good is scarce, that one must fight for it, and that one doesn't always have what is needed. However, all of that view crumbles when a fundamental truth is recognized. Good has already been provided from the beginning, and the task is not to search for it, but to accept it. There is no lack in the divine mind. The same intelligence that makes the rosebush bloom without anguish and sustains the sparrow without salary takes care of each human soul with perfect love. If we do not see it manifested, it is not because it has not been granted to us, but because we have not yet recognized it. Over the years, I have seen how the clouds of need dissipate as soon as the soul affirms with faith, God is my supply, and its flow is unlimited. This is not a pious illusion nor a passive hope. It is a law, a living law that acts as soon as it is obeyed. This source, God, does not need external conditions to work. It is not limited by national economy, past mistakes, or present circumstances. Its flow eternally continues, like a river that never ceases, waiting to be received by those who open themselves to its presence. Just as air enters freely into a room as soon as the window is opened, so does supply arrive when the soul stops resisting and becomes receptive. However, resistance often disguises itself in many forms: doubt, fear, resentment, complaint, inherited beliefs. Every thought of "I can't, there's none, I don't deserve," is like a stone thrown into the river of good. But the right word, spoken with authority and faith, removes every invisible obstacle and allows the flow to begin to manifest. I remember a woman who came to me distressed about her bills and debts. She had tried every human method, asking for loans, reducing her burdens, seeking more employment. Nothing worked. I told her, "Stop looking at the world as your provider. Align your mind with the principle and watch how good appears." Together we began declaring every morning, "God is the source of my provision. Its flow is unlimited and comes to me now through expected or unexpected channels." In a few days, money she had not expected arrived from an old inheritance that had been held up for years. "It has been like a miracle," she said, and I replied, "It was not a miracle, it was a law." God is not withholding good. There is no need to convince him. There is no need to steal. One must align with him, recognize him as the source, and open the internal doors that allow him in. No external door matters if the door of consciousness remains closed, and that door opens with the word, with faith, with gratitude, and with the spiritual firmness of one who no longer lets themselves be guided by appearances. When the soul affirms, "Everything I need has already been given to me, even though I don't yet see it," it is placing one foot on the invisible bridge that will take it to fulfillment. And if it perseveres without hesitation, it will see how the heavens open, how its minister arrives effortlessly, how what is necessary appears, as if it had always been there, because in truth, it has always been there. The inexhaustible source is not outside. It is not in the employer, nor in the generous relative, nor in the sale that is expected to close. It is in God, and God is in you. If you seek outside, you will beg. If you look within, you will reign, because good has never been absent. It has only been waiting for someone with faith and authority to call it by name and declare it present. And when that happens, scarcity retreats like shadow before the sun, because truth has no enemies, and the truth is this: God is your supply, and its flow is eternal. Chapter 2. The supply does not come from man. Neither people, positions, nor inheritances are your provision. God works through channels, but is not limited by any. One of the greatest traps in human consciousness is the belief that someone else is the source of your good. The husband, the boss, the client, the benefactor, the wealthy relative. Many look with hope, and sometimes with fear, at the faces of those they consider indispensable for their livelihood. But here is a truth that liberates. If you accept it with your heart, No human being is your provider. God is your only supply. Man is a channel, nothing more. He can be a conduit through which divine good flows, but he is not the source. And if that channel closes, another will open, because God does not depend on men to manifest his provision. The soul that understands this is free from the fear of loss, from the fear of being rejected or abandoned, from the servitude that arises when one believes someone has power over their livelihood. I have often heard the phrase, "If he doesn't help me, who will?" And I always respond, God has 1,000 ways of reaching you, and he does not need that he to act. A woman who was abandoned by her husband, who had supported the household, told me she felt her financial life was over. I said, "Do you really believe your provision was in a man and not in God?" The channel has changed, but the source remains. Look to the source, not to the channel that has closed. And so it was. She began to affirm every day with a lifted heart, God is my provision. I am not bound to any person. My good comes from above and flows freely to me. Soon after, an old friend offered her a teaching opportunity she had not sought. There, her economic restoration began. But beyond the money, she regained her inner power, her spiritual dignity, her trust in the law. The most common error is placing faith in visible instruments, but the one who trusts in the visible trembles when the visible moves. On the other hand, the one who has anchored their faith in the Spirit fears not change, because they know the Spirit never changes. Channels may close, but the spring remains flowing underground, waiting to burst forth through another unexpected crack. Just like the waters that sprang from the desert when Moses struck the rock, the supply appears when called from the source. It is necessary to cut the mental bonds of dependence. He who feels he needs someone to prosper has unknowingly placed that person in the place of God. That is idolatry, and it always brings suffering. The true source is clear. If this channel closes, another better one will open. I am not sustained by man, but by the law. And that declaration, made with power, unleashes miracles that the senses do not comprehend. God can use anyone at any time as an instrument to give you what you need. He can make a sale close through an unknown person, a forgotten payment reappear, a hidden gift become profitable, or an idea planted in the quiet of the soul suddenly blossom as unexpected abundance. But none of this happens while one persists in looking to man as the source. Sometimes, in his infinite wisdom, the Spirit allows a false dependence to break so that we may learn that no human being holds our good. When someone fails us, when the expected help is denied, when employment is lost or a business closes, we should not fall into despair but into gratitude. Something greater is about to be revealed. The channel has broken for the source to manifest. There is no worse prison than believing our security depends on what others do or do not do for us, because that is to bind ourselves to instability, to the changing opinions of others, to the fickle favor of the world. But the one who turns to God as the source is freed. He becomes a vessel of the eternal supply that does not need justifications, contracts, or permissions. The only thing it needs is faith. And I have seen this happen not once but many times. The provider that seemed essential disappears, and the faithful soul discovers that not only does it survive, but it flourishes. The company that seemed indispensable falls, and another, more perfect one rises from the ashes, because God is not limited by human means. And when the soul aligns with the truth, provision flows from where it is least expected. Always remember, channels may change, but the source remains, and that source is infinite, eternal, unchanging. The gold of the Spirit does not deplete. Your good does not depend on a name, a signature, or a face. It comes from above, and you receive it to the extent that you recognize it. Do not look to man. Do not beg for favors. Do not place your faith in what can disappear. Look to the principle. Affirm the truth. Give thanks in advance and stand firm. For the supply does not come from man. It comes from God, and God never fails. Chapter 3. Your word is your key. The spoken word, charged with faith, is the door that opens the heavenly vaults. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is not a poetic phrase nor an abstract metaphor. It is a precise declaration of spiritual law. Since the dawn of the world, the Word has been power, and it still is. Every time you speak, you are shaping. Every affirmation that comes from your lips is a seed that falls upon the invisible garden of the Spirit, and sooner or later, it will bloom. It is not what you think in secret that shapes your world the fastest. It is what you affirm aloud, with authority, certainty, and faith. The word is vibration. The word is decree. The word is a magic wand that touches the invisible substance of the ether and molds it. And if it is charged with fear, it creates fears. If it is saturated with doubt, it generates blocks. But if it is anointed with faith, gratitude, and spiritual authority, then the windows of heaven open and the blessing descends. I have known many souls who prayed in silence but spoke in defeat. Their hearts longed for prosperity, but their lips incessantly repeated, "I can't, there's no way, it's difficult, maybe someday." And I have had to tell them firmly, "Your word is law. Do not contradict with your tongue what your soul seeks to manifest." Every word spoken with emotion and conviction becomes a decree. If you affirm from lack, you are sealing the flow of good. But if you speak from abundance, even if you don't yet see the manifestation, you are opening invisible doors that only faith can sustain. A woman came to me, distressed by her economic situation. Every time she spoke, she said things like, "Everything is so expensive. I don't know how I'm going to pay this. Money isn't enough." I asked her if she wanted to prosper. She said yes, with tears in her eyes. So I told her, "Start speaking as a rich woman, not from arrogance, but from truth. Replace your lamentations with decrees of faith. Say every day, 'God is my supply and large sums of money come to me in perfect ways.'" She did it at first with hesitation, then with conviction. In the third week, she received a better-paying job offer, and an old debt was suddenly paid off. "I feel like my life changed because I spoke differently," she told me. And so it was. Because the word not only describes reality, it creates it. Every time you declare something, you are writing on the canvas of the universe. And if your declaration is aligned with the divine principle, it cannot fail. When the word joins with the spirit, it becomes the channel through which good flows into visible form. That's why I always recommend speaking in the present. Don't say, "I will have." Say, "I have." Don't say, "Maybe someday." Say, "Right now, by God's law, it is manifest." Don't wait to see to believe. Speak believing, and you will see. The word is not a magic formula, but it is a sacred tool. It is the sword of the soul. It is the rudder that steers the ship of your destiny. Every word you speak can be a brick that builds your spiritual temple or a stone that tears it down. That's why I have taught time and again, watch your words. Make your mouth an instrument of creation, not destruction. And I am not just talking about words related to money. I'm talking about all expressions. When you criticize, you close. When you complain, you block. When you fear aloud, you give shape to what is feared. But when you give thanks, even without seeing, you are planting certainty. When you praise life, you multiply its wave. When you declare good, even when everything seems the opposite, you are unleashing invisible forces that respond to the call. The word is a bridge, a decree. Exactly. Because on the spiritual plane, speaking with faith is acting. Every word is a key, and that key can either open or close the heavenly vaults. Choose to open. Choose to speak phrases that are impregnated with power, and not just once, but every day with perseverance. Because the universe does not move by pleas, but by convictions. And conviction is expressed in the word that does not hesitate, that does not falter, that does not contradict itself. God has already provided everything, but that provision must be called forth, and it is called by the word. Just as the world was created by the word, so your world is recreated by your own words. Do not seek good outside, affirm it with your voice. Call forth the supply, declare it yours. Thank it before seeing it, and wait calmly for its appearance, for the law never fails. Your word is your key, and the door it opens is the door of heaven. Chapter 4. Breaking the spell of scarcity. Dismantling the illusion of lack that the world has woven over your mind. Scarcity is not real. It is a mirage, a shadow projected by the erroneous beliefs of the world that has hypnotized the masses, making them believe that there is not enough, that they must struggle, that they must compete, that they must resign themselves. It is a collective spell that has been carefully woven for centuries, repeated by generations, validated by institutions, reinforced by appearances, until it became a mental state that people accept without resistance. But I have come to tell you, brave soul, scarcity is an illusion, and you can awaken. Every limitation you perceive in your life has its root in an idea, and that idea was planted by someone at some point in the fertile soil of your consciousness. Perhaps it was your parents repeating phrases of fear. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to suffer to live. You can't have it all. Perhaps it was a religion that taught you that virtue lies in poverty. Maybe it was early experiences that convinced you that you were unworthy. But none of these beliefs come from truth. They all arose from ignorance of spiritual law. The truth is this: God is abundance, and you are a child of God. Therefore, abundance is your inheritance. You are not a spiritual beggar, but an heir to the kingdom. But as long as your mind is enchanted by the illusion of lack, you will not be able to see or receive what already belongs to you. Waking up from this spell requires a conscious act, a closed act of rebellion against everything the world has taught you about money, scarcity, and effort. It requires looking beyond appearances and declaring boldly, "Although my eyes do not yet see, I know that my good is here. I call it, I receive it, I accept it." The spell remains alive through the word, repetition, and shared fear. Listen to those around you. They speak as if the world is about to end, as if everything is a loss, as if nothing is enough. And those words feed the shadow, reinforce the veil. That is why, if you wish to break the spell, the first thing you must do is stop speaking like the enchanted. Start speaking as one who has awakened. Say, "Everything I need comes to me easily in divine order." Say, "I am surrounded by opportunities." Say, "Nothing is missing because I live in God's abundance." And repeat it not once, but until your mind begins to believe it, until your soul recognizes it as truth, until the outer world begins to reflect what you have sown within. I remember a man who, after losing his business, came to me saying, "Everything is over for me." His eyes were clouded by the spell. I replied, "Nothing is over. Only a form has fallen. The substance remains. You have lost nothing because the source keeps flowing. Change your gaze and you will see the new appear." He began to declare every morning, "Nothing is lost in the spirit. Everything that is mine comes to me multiplied." 2 months later, a new idea arose in his mind, a sudden inspiration that led him to an even more prosperous venture than the previous one. His world had not changed. His consciousness had. That is breaking the spell, seeing beyond what is seen, thinking beyond what is repeated, affirming beyond what is heard. You are not subject to common fate. You are not bound to the economy or luck or anyone's dictates. You are united to an infinite source, and that source knows no crisis. But as long as you don't believe it, you won't see it. That is why the first work is not external, but internal. Question every thought that says, "There is none, I can't, it's difficult." Face it as you would a thief trying to enter your house and replace it with divine truth. "I am prosperous by nature, abundance belongs to me, it is all already given." Every time you do this, you are breaking one of the threads of the spell. And if you do it consistently, one day you will wake up completely. You will feel that the veil has fallen. You will no longer live waiting for a gift, but claiming your inheritance. You will no longer speak as a slave to circumstances, but as the creator of your world. Because you will have seen that scarcity was never real. It was just a dream, and you have awakened. Break the spell, declare the truth, and watch as the invisible becomes provision. Chapter 5, the Law of Demand and Faith. Ask without fear, wait with joy, receive without doubt. Faith is the substance of what is requested. I have said many times, and I repeat it with the authority that my spiritual experience confers upon me. Faith is the substance of what is requested, the evidence of what is not seen. It is not a comfort or an illusion that calms the soul while it waits. It is creative force, molding energy, a living law. And where there is demand, faith prepares the way for the good to come. Most souls do not receive because they do not ask, or because they ask with fear, like one begging a harsh master. The error lies in not understanding that the spiritual law does not respond to lament or fear, but to certainty. God is not reluctant to give. It is not necessary to convince him or beg him. What is required is recognizing what has already been given and making a legitimate demand with a peaceful soul, knowing that the law is at work. Asking in spiritual terms is not saying, "I would like," but declaring with power, "This is mine by divine right. I claim it, I receive it, and I give thanks for it." That is the true demand, a firm declaration based on the conviction that the invisible has already been prepared and only needs to be precipitated into visible form. But for that demand to be effective, it must be accompanied by faith. For without faith it is hollow. Faith is the invisible magnet that attracts what is requested. It is the key that turns the lock of the heavenly storehouse. When a demand is made and awaited with doubt, the decree is nullified. When asked with distress, one is affirming lack. But when asked with joy, one is anticipating fulfillment. I have known souls that ask and then observe the external world every hour, searching for signs, restlessly and impatiently. That is not faith, but anxiety. And anxiety is fear in disguise. True faith asks and quiets itself. It asks and gives thanks, asks and acts as one who already possesses. For faith does not need to see to believe. It believes, and therefore it sees. A woman once told me, "I have been asking for money for weeks, but nothing is happening." I asked her how she had made her request. She replied, "I have begged God to help me, to give me at least a little." I said, "God does not give just a little. His abundance is immense, but you have asked from desperation, not from faith. Change your tone. Ask as an heir, not as an orphan." I taught her to affirm every day, "Great sums of money come to me perfectly in divine order," and most importantly, I asked her to thank in advance as one who has already received. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected sum from a debt I had already considered lost. "It worked," she told me, and I replied, "It hasn't worked. You've obeyed the law." And this is how this wonderful law works. Where there is a clear demand sustained by faith, the answer comes, not always at the expected time or through the expected channel, but always in the perfect time and manner, because faith is capricious, wise, knows how to wait without anxiety, act without fear, carve without doubt. It is also important to understand that the demand must be specific. The universe does not respond to vagueness. One who says, "I want to improve," does not give direction to the law. But one who asserts, "I now claim the perfect sum necessary to meet such a need in divine order and without harm to anyone," is guiding the creative power toward a precise manifestation. And that precision is what allows faith to rest with joy, because it knows what it is waiting for. Another woman, distressed about her health, told me, "I have asked to be healed, but nothing is happening." I asked, "Have you thanked as if you were already healed? Have you walked, breathed, and spoken as one who already possesses their good?" She remained silent. She understood that her demand had been lukewarm, uncertain. She then began to declare, "Divine health flows through me. My body is full of life. I give thanks for my complete restoration." Within a few days, the improvement was so notable that her doctor was astonished. But I was not surprised, for I knew that faith moves mountains. It is not enough to wish. It is not enough to ask as one who doubts. One must declare with certainty, act as though it is already true, and give thanks as one who has already received. That is the triad of the law of demand and faith. Ask without fear, wait with joy, and receive without doubt. And if any voice in your mind says, "What if it doesn't come?" respond with authority, "It is already on its way. For what I have asked in faith, in accordance with the law, cannot fail. God does not fail." Repeat your demand with peace, reaffirm it every day without anxiety. Speak your decree aloud with gratitude, and then remain in certainty. Faith is not flighty. Faith is serene power, and one who asks with faith receives with certainty. Chapter 6. The Invisible Tithe. Give without fear, offer in secret, sow with joy. This is how the law of return is activated. The world teaches to hold on, the Spirit teaches to give. And here lies one of the great differences between limited consciousness and spiritual consciousness. The former clings to things out of fear of loss. The latter gives with certainty of possession. The more one clings with fear, the more one closes themselves to receiving. But the hands that give open to the flow of the universe, and through them flows abundance like a river that never ceases. There are those who hear of tithing and think only of giving a material tenth. But there is a deeper, more powerful, and more subtle tithe. The invisible tithe. It's not just about coins or figures, but about a spiritual principle. The sacred return to the source that sustains us. The active recognition that we are not owners, but channels. And when the channel gives, it cleanses, and by cleansing, it expands, and by expanding, it receives more. Giving is not loss, it is sowing. And every sowing made in faith, love, and gratitude activates the law of return. I have seen with my own eyes how a small offering given with joy, without expecting anything in return, returns multiplied through unexpected paths. For God does not see quantity, but the heart. And the heart, when free, uncalculated, and without fear, aligns with the very nature of the universe, which gives all without measure. A man once came to me lamenting his constant scarcity. He spoke of his care with money, how he could not part with a single coin, for he felt he had nothing, even for himself. I asked him if he had ever offered something without expecting a reward, for the mere joy of giving. He looked at me astonished, as if I was speaking in a foreign tongue. I said, "Start by giving something, however small, but do it with faith, and do it in silence, not out of obligation but as an act of power." At first he hesitated, but he gave. One day, seeing a needy mother, he paid for the bread of her children. Another day, he gave a small sum to a cause he felt was noble. He did not speak of it, nor seek applause. He simply gave. And with each act he felt his heart being freed. Not long after, he was called for a job opportunity that had been pending for months. The channel had opened, and abundance began to flow. For giving does not impoverish. Giving purifies, elevates, and expands, and not just economically, giving attention, time, a good thought, words of encouragement, inspired ideas, giving without announcing what will come. All of this is part of the invisible tithe. It is returning to the universe something of what has been received, recognizing that everything has been given to us by grace. And when this principle is upheld consistently, poverty becomes impossible, for the law cannot be deceived. What is given from the soul returns multiplied, not always from the same channel, but with the same substance. Love returns as love, money as provision, time as opportunities, generosity as blessing. The most common mistake is to give with calculation or fear. I will give this, but what if it doesn't return? That doubt nullifies everything. There is no power in giving from a mindset of scarcity. But if one gives knowing their source is infinite, then each offering is a divine sowing, and no divine sowing goes without fruit. It is also essential to give in secret, not because there is a need to hide good deeds, but because the soul that gives to be seen has already received its reward. But the one who gives in discretion, trusting that the law sees the invisible, awakens a silent and perfect return. "Let not your left hand know what your right hand does," taught the Master. For true tithing does not need an audience. It needs purity. Giving is asserting possession. Who can give has conquered the fear of losing. And whoever has conquered the fear of losing becomes a magnet for good, because they understand that their security lies not in what they hold, but in what they recognize as flowing. Abundance does not dwell in full pockets, but in open hearts. Every time you give from the soul, you are saying to the universe, "I trust you. I know that I lack nothing. I know that what goes out returns multiplied. I know that by sowing I reap." And that recognition moves the law. So do not fear giving. Give with wisdom, yes, give with discernment, but above all, give with joy. For giving with joy is sowing with love, and the harvest of love is always abundant. The invisible tithe is the art of blessing without showing the hand. It is the golden key that turns in silence, and each time it turns, it opens the vaults of heaven. Chapter 7. Provision in the midst of the desert. Miracles appear when there is no visible path. How to trust when everything seems denied. There are moments in the soul's life when everything seems lost. Closed paths, sealed doors, exhausted resources. It feels as though one is walking through an arid desert with no shade or well, where every step leads to more emptiness. In such hours the world shouts, "There is no way out," but the Spirit whispers, "Here is where the miracle is born." Because it is precisely when appearances deny everything, when the supply is hidden and logic offers no answers, that the soul is called to unfold its highest faith. A faith that does not depend on what it sees, what it has, or what it understands. A faith that declares, "Though I see no way, I know God will open one. Though there is no bread, I know the manna will fall from the sky. Though there is no water, I know the rock will open." The desert is not punishment, it is revelation. It is the stage where spiritual law demonstrates that it does not need visible means to act. It is where it is shown that God does not depend on conditions, but transcends all conditions. And the soul that crosses the desert with faith not only receives provision, but it transforms because it has seen with its own eyes that good does not come from the world, but from the source. I remember a man who visited me, his face twisted with anguish. He had lost his job, his family had no food, and the rent was due in 3 days. "I have nothing," he said. I looked into his eyes and replied with tenderness and firmness, "That is what the world says, but the truth says God is your supply." And he has not closed his hands. I asked him that despite everything, he began to give thanks every morning, as if he had already received everything needed, to walk through the city with dignity and repeat with faith, even if nothing is visible, in the Spirit all is well. My provision comes now in perfect divine order. He followed my advice, and on the 3rd day, when he no longer expected anything other than a miracle, an old work acquaintance whom he hadn't seen in years found him by chance. He offered a temporary contract and even advanced the full payment. "I never would have imagined that someone who seemed so distant would be the channel of my provision," he exclaimed. And I replied, "Because it was not that person, it was God working through her." God does not need known paths. He creates paths in the midst of the sand. The Spirit is not limited by matter. What matters is not what you see, but what you affirm. If in the middle of the desert you declare, "I am sustained by an invisible source and nothing is lacking," that declaration begins to work immediately, even though your senses may still say the opposite. The mistake is to yield to fear, because fear feeds the appearance. Fear gives power to the desert, but the soul transfigures. When the soul remains firm without denying the truth, the drought ends, the ground softens, and the water springs forth, not as a reward for having suffered, but as a response to the recognition. And that recognition must be constant, because the desert is not crossed with urgent prayers alone, but with a constant attitude. There are those who ask fervently one day, but the next they give up. There are those who affirm the provision but then deny it with their complaints. This is not how miracles work. A miracle responds to persevering faith, the faith that does not kneel before the appearance, the faith that walks on the sand as if already walking on solid ground. Remember what happened with the people of Israel. They wandered for 40 years in the desert, but they never lacked bread. Every morning manna descended, and when they murmured, the heavens closed. But when they praised, the provision returned. That story is not a myth, it is an image of the human soul. When you trust, you receive. When you doubt, you delay. When you give thanks, you accelerate. Do not fear the desert, it is not your enemy, it is your school. And where the world says there is nothing, the law says, "Here I am too." You do not need to see to believe. You need to believe to see, because it is not the sand that provides the bread, but the Spirit that is above it. So if today you find yourself in that dry place where nothing moves and everything seems denied, lift up your word. Do not be dragged by the lament of the senses. Declare, "I am in the midst of the desert, but I am not alone. God guides me, God sustains me, and what I need comes to me now without delay, without effort, without lack." And the more inhospitable the environment seems, the more glorious the miracle will be. For in the place where no one expects provision, God reveals that He is the source, and the sand becomes a garden, and the scorching sun becomes a guiding light. And you, who are walking without knowing how, will discover that everything was already prepared, even in the midst of the desert. Chapter 8. Thought as the magnet of good. Your mind, when harmonized with abundance, becomes an infallible magnet for divine supply. The mind is an invisible workshop where external experience is forged. There, in the silence of your thoughts, you are shaping the forms that will later appear in your path. Just as a magnet attracts according to its polarity, your thought, when imbued with truth, gratitude, and certainty, irresistibly attracts divine supply. I have said many times that the universe does not respond to your needs, but to your beliefs. You may need with all your soul, but if you think from a place of lack, you will attract more lack. On the other hand, if you think from a place of possession, if you vibrate in the consciousness of "I already have," good will rush to meet you, even from unexpected places. Everything begins in the mind. If you believe there is not enough, you will live surrounded by scarcity. If you think money is hard to come by, it will be. If you are convinced that you must fight to obtain, struggle will be your constant companion. But if you think from spiritual truth, if you begin to mentally affirm that your supply is secure, that the universe is on your side, that everything you need is coming to you in perfect order, then your thought becomes a magnetic field, a powerful call to good. A woman who had lived in poverty for years once confessed to me that what troubled her most was not the lack of money, but her way of thinking. She had grown up hearing phrases like, "Being poor is humble, the rich are selfish." And even though she longed for abundance, her mind was trapped in a web of contradictory thoughts that kept her away from the good. I taught her to clean her thinking just as one would clean a temple, word by word, belief by belief. She began to repeat daily in her mind and aloud, "I love the good loves me. I think in abundance, and abundance thinks of me." Soon she began to receive help, new ideas, and doors opened. It was not luck, but the change of magnet. Her thinking stopped repelling good and started attracting it, because good is not attained by chasing it. It manifests when the mind becomes compatible with it. If your thought vibrates in harmony with abundance, it will come as a natural response, not as an exception. It is not a matter of force, but of alignment. Just as the needle of a compass points north effortlessly, your thought, when free from fear and full of faith, points to provision. But you must watch the mind with firmness, because the world plants thoughts every day. News of scarcity, phrases of fear, comments of doubt. And if you don't watch these thoughts, they come in and settle like unwanted guests. It's not enough to think well for a while. It is necessary to keep your thoughts high all day, just as one protects a garden from dust and shadows. If upon waking your first thought is one of gratitude, you have aligned your magnet. If upon seeing a bill to pay you say mentally, "This will be covered in divine order," you are affirming power. If when hearing that things are difficult, you affirm within yourself, "For me, everything flows by the law of God," you are polarizing your mind in abundance. A woman told me she had a box where she kept unpaid bills and receipts, and every time she looked at it, she felt anxiety. I said, that box is an altar of fear. Transform that thought. Every time you look at it, bless those bills. Thank them because they are already covered by the divine abundance that flows toward me. She did it. She changed the repeated thought of fear for one of anticipated gratitude. Within a few weeks, most of her debts were paid. The visible responded to the invisible magnet of the corrected thought. There is nothing more powerful than a mind purified of fear, complaint, judgment, and doubt. That mind is a perfect antenna, a fertile field, an open door to good. And it's not something that is achieved once and for all. It is a daily practice, a spiritual habit. Every thought can either bring you closer to supply or push it away. It's not about denying reality, it's about affirming a higher reality. You may see what is, but think of what is coming. You can go through a difficulty without surrendering your thought to fear. You can live an experience of lack without planting it in your mind as a permanent truth. Because what you think consistently, you form. And what you form, you live. Tune your thought as you would tune an instrument. Do not let it produce discordant notes, and if it does, correct it with love. Say, "I do not accept this." The truth is that everything comes to me easily and abundantly. I am one with good, and good is one with me. Repeat a firm decree. Firm thought creates a vibration, and that vibration calls. It cannot be stopped. It is law. Just as metal flies to a magnet effortlessly, provision rushes to harmonized thought. Think good, and good will think of you. Think as a child of God, not as a beggar of the world. Because your thought, when filled with truth, is the silent call the universe can never ignore. Chapter 9. Canceling Spiritual Debts. Forgiveness as Liberation of Economic Flow. Good cannot come when the soul is tied to resentment. I have seen many souls work tirelessly, decree fervently, sow with faith, and yet not receive. I have felt in them the sincere desire to prosper, the burning wish to manifest their good, yet something invisible blocked it, like a half-open door, like a river stopped by a hidden stone. And when I delved with them into the depth of their being, I almost always found the same thing: an unsettled debt on the soul plane, a lack of forgiveness, a resentment that still silently burned, an unhealed wound. Forgiveness is not a moral issue, it is a vibrational one. It is not an obligation imposed from the outside, but a spiritual necessity for the free flow of good. As long as the soul is bound to the injustice suffered, to the unresolved offense, to the hurtful word, to the pain of abandonment, its field closes. And good, though it may knock on the door, cannot enter. For every emotional debt that is not forgiven becomes an energetic block, and this block halts not only peace, but provision. Dense emotions form knots in the spiritual body, and these knots are then reflected in the material world, in debts that go unpaid, in payments that do not arrive, in doors that do not open. It is not punishment. It is law. I remember a woman who confessed to me through tears, "I don't understand why, if I have given so much, if I repeat affirmations every day, I still live in lack." I asked her, "Is there anyone you still haven't forgiven?" She lowered her gaze. She spoke of an old betrayal, of a friend who had stolen not only money, but also trust. She had never forgiven her, and in her soul there still burned a flame of resentment that overshadowed everything else. I said, "As long as that debt is alive in you, no wealth can settle in your life. Cancel that debt. Release it, not for her, but for you. Because as long as you believe someone owes you, the universe will reflect that same thing, unpaid debts. The soul that demands justice from pain creates a mirror that multiplies its wound. But the soul that forgives from the heart, not just in words, breaks the cycle of debt and paves the way for abundance. For forgiveness is not weakness, it is spiritual authority. It is saying to the universe, I release this offense. I do not need human compensation. I claim my freedom and declare that nothing is lacking in my life." And that not only frees the emotion but also the material. I have seen people receive payments, forgotten inheritances, unexpected raises just days after they made a sincere act of forgiveness. Not because the universe rewarded them, but because by forgiving, they removed the stone from the river and the flow of abundance returned. For forgiveness to be effective, it must be complete. It is not enough to say, "I've forgotten it." One must bless, one must release, one must declare, "I owe nothing to that person, and they owe me nothing. I free them and I free myself. I wish them well and I move forward. And if it hurts to repeat it more. Because the soul does not heal on the surface, but through the loving repetition that dissolves the wound. It is also necessary to forgive oneself. Often the soul carries guilt for past mistakes, wrong decisions, wasted time, hurtful words, actions that caused pain. That guilt, though silent, acts as an invisible chain that blocks good. Because the one who feels unworthy becomes unable to receive. But when one declares, "I forgive myself, I have learned, I am new in spirit, life does not condemn me, and I do not condemn myself," then the soul is cleansed and the way is opened. Money cannot come to a consciousness that believes itself guilty. Success cannot come to a mind that still hates itself. The divine supply cannot enter a heart filled with resentment. The channel must be clear, and forgiveness is the living water that cleanses it. Just look at nature to understand it. Rivers flow because they do not hold back. The wind blows because it does not retain. The earth bears fruit because it does not judge. But the human soul, when it holds on to grudges, hardens and stops giving and receiving. That's why forgiveness is not for the other. It is for becoming a channel once again. Every time you forgive, you cleanse your field. Every time you bless the one who hurt you, you are sharpening your spiritual sword. And every time you forgive yourself, you are restoring your inner throne. Forgiveness is not forgetting, it is transmutation. It is taking the wound and turning it into light. It is looking at the past and saying, "Thank you for what I learned. Now I move forward, free." And that freedom is the prelude to provision, for when the soul no longer carries weight, everything arrives effortlessly. When there is no spiritual debt, the universe returns in abundance, and then you understand that good was never lost. It was only waiting for you to release the resentment and open your arms. Chapter 10. Unexpected Wealth, Unforeseen Channels. God does not repeat forms, how to prepare to receive from the unknown. One of the greatest limitations of the human soul is its attachment to known forms. Man asks for abundance, but then demands that the universe deliver it through the same door it has come through before. He wants provision but fears the mystery. He longs for miracles but doubts whether they fit into his calculations. However, the spirit is not limited by predetermined paths. God does not repeat forms, and when he is allowed to act freely, he does so through unforeseen channels. I have often stated that good things come when expected, but they rarely arrive in the way we expect. The one who decrees with faith but then clings to a single mode of fulfillment hinders divine action, because the universe delights in surprising us. The more the mind is freed from the how, the more space the law has to act powerfully. A woman shared her desire to receive a certain amount for an urgent debt. She visualized every day a payment from her employer or an approved loan, but when it didn't arrive through those means, she thought her decree wasn't working. I said, God has 1,000 channels to bless you. Why restrict his work to just 2? She decided to release the attachment and began affirming, my good comes now through the perfect channel, which may be visible or invisible to me. A few days later, a neighbor she barely knew spoke to her about a well-paid temporary job, just at the right time. I never would have imagined she would be the bridge, she said. I replied, it wasn't her, it was the channel through which the law flowed when you released control. Because divine supply is not obliged to repeat paths, there is no one formula. Good can come through a stranger, a sudden idea, an unexpected gift, an opportunity never considered, a mistake in your favor, a forgotten inheritance, or a talent that suddenly blossoms. But for that unforeseen channel to activate, it is necessary to let go of mental rigidity. Many decree, God is my supply, but then impatiently watch the boss, the client, or the relative. They are so focused on a face that they do not see the silent movement of the spirit behind the curtain, and if that face does not respond, they become disillusioned, which blocks the flow, because their faith was not placed in God, but in the channel. The channel is not the source, it is merely a bridge, and when one bridge closes, another always appears. Preparing to receive from the unknown is letting go of your own plan. It's affirming the good without dictating how life should fulfill it. It's acting every day as if you have already received, even without knowing where the answer will come from. It's looking at each face, each place, each situation as a possible vehicle for the miracle. Because in the spiritual realm, there is no such thing as chance. Everything is ordered, everything is arranged, and what is meant for you will find you if you are open to receive. Once, a man desperate from lack of work said to me, there is nothing for me. I've searched everywhere. I asked him, have you looked beyond the places where you always look? He looked at me in silence. I suggested he go for a walk without a fixed destination, repeating, today the Spirit will guide me to the perfect channel. He did. During that walk, he found a sign in a shop he had never seen before, asking for help for a temporary position. He entered impulsively and was hired on the spot. Days later, that temporary position turned into a permanent one. None of this was in his plans, but God had foreseen it. The unknown is not a threat. It is fertile ground. It is where miracles bloom. If everything came through familiar paths, there would be no space for wonder. But the soul that walks fearlessly toward the unknown already believes that its good comes in perfect form and activates the hidden current of the universe. And there's something more. Many times the unforeseen channel is not external, but internal. An idea that appears upon waking, a forgotten memory that leads to action, a sudden impulse that leads to a meeting. The Spirit whispers paths that the logical mind cannot trace, and those who train themselves to listen, to trust, to obey without resistance, open doors they didn't even know existed. Don't try to decide how your good will manifest. Just decide to receive it. Be clear in your demand, but flexible in the form. Declare with faith, everything I need comes to me through expected or unexpected channels, but always in divine order. And each time doubt visits you, respond with certainty, I don't need to know how. I just know it is on its way. Then the universe will move, and it will do so in a way that will astonish you. Because when you release control and surrender to divine wisdom, the impossible becomes real, the distant becomes near, the hidden becomes manifested, and you discover that the good was never lost. It was coming to you through a channel you had not yet imagined. Chapter 11. The Atmosphere of Wealth. Create a vibrational field around you that naturally invokes provision as a response. The soul that desires abundance must become fertile ground to receive it. And that ground is not prepared solely with decrees, affirmations, or prayers, though all of them are valuable. There is a more subtle, more powerful, and more decisive dimension, the internal atmosphere that emanates from thoughts, emotions, and words. This invisible atmosphere is what dictates what comes near to you and what moves away, because each person lives surrounded by a vibrational field, and that field acts as a magnet that attracts or repels provision. Wealth is not just an external condition, it is a spiritual atmosphere. There are those who live in splendid houses but reside in a consciousness of scarcity, And there are those who, with very little, radiate such peace, gratitude, and trust that they begin to attract good without seeking it. It is not about appearances, but about internal emanation. And that emanation does not lie. It is the signal the universe picks up to respond in kind. The prosperous soul has a presence that is felt even without speaking. They move with dignity, walk with gratitude, speak with certainty, do not complain, do not murmur, and do not repeat the litany of collective fears. They have understood that supply does not depend on the objects they own, but on the vibratory state in which they live. And they have learned to protect that state as one would care for a sacred jewel. Creating an atmosphere of wealth is planting day by day thoughts of abundance, words of gratitude, emotions of certainty. It is refusing to dramatize difficulties and choosing instead the high tone of faith. It is looking at life as a field of blessings, even hidden ones, not as a terrain of scarcity. A woman who lived in very humble conditions confessed to me that everything around her seemed to scream poverty: her clothes, her house, her circumstances. I told her, start by changing your atmosphere. Dress with dignity in what you have. Bless each object. Clean your space with love. Speak as one who knows that something great is coming. Raise the tone of your soul, and your world will follow. She did it. She began to live as if she were already surrounded by wealth, not with fantasy but with reverence, and soon everything started to change. A new job, different friends, unexpected gifts. She had not performed magic. She had changed her atmosphere because, like attracts like, if your field is impregnated with complaints, you will attract more reasons to complain. If you are saturated with gratitude, you will attract more reasons to be grateful. If your thoughts vibrate in lack, everything that comes near will resonate with loss. But if your soul emanates trust, life responds with generosity. The atmosphere is not built with loose words, but with a coherent life. Every gesture counts. The way you greet someone, the way you speak of yourself, the emotion with which you pay a bill, the care you put into your surroundings. All of this emits signals, and those signals ask, am I ready for good, or am I not yet ready? Creating an atmosphere of wealth is declaring with your entire being, I trust, I deserve, I receive. It is rejecting mental misery, even if you don't have gold in your pockets. It is living as one who knows their treasure is on the way. And that attitude, maintained with firmness, summons provision like a flower summons bees. You don't need to surround yourself with luxuries. You need to surround yourself with truth, order, beauty, and harmony. These are the elements of true wealth. Harmony in your space, order in your words, beauty in your thoughts, peace in your dealings. All of that forms a magnetic field, and that field speaks for you, even when you are silent. Once a young man told me that no one took him seriously, that no one offered him opportunities. I asked him how he presented himself to the world. He replied, as someone who needs help. I said, and that is how they see you. Change that. Walk as one who has something to offer. Think as one who already possesses. Plant a different vibration. And so he did. Soon they started asking him for collaboration, inviting him to projects, recognizing abilities he hadn't even remembered. He didn't change his resume, he changed his atmosphere. Wealth is not imposed from the outside, it is cultivated from within. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to align your inner field with the frequency of divine supply. And for that, you must live as one already supported by the source, even if you can't see its fruits yet. Live with cleanliness, even if you have little. Speak with hope, even if you are still waiting. Be grateful as one who has already received. Give as one who does not fear losing. Walk with your head held high, not in pride, but because you know from where your good comes. Then your field will begin to change. And when your field changes, the world responds to you differently. Because you are not asking, you are emanating, and emanation is the law, and the law does not fail. Chapter 12. The words that bind and the words that free. The language of the poor soul and the language of the rich soul. What you say, you create. The universe does not listen to empty pleas or continuous lamentations. The universe responds to the word filled with conviction, to the language that directly emanates from the inner state. Because in the invisible realm, every word is a mold, and what is said with faith, whether for good or for ill, becomes form. Words are not innocent sounds carried by the wind. They are decrees, threads that weave reality, seeds that blossom according to their nature. I've heard many souls who desire prosperity, yet they speak only in terms of ruin, loss, and impossibility. They say, I don't have, I can't, it's too late, it's impossible, I never get it, I'm always missing out. They don't realize that these phrases are rusty keys that close the doors of provision. They speak from the poor soul, from the consciousness that has accepted scarcity as its destiny. And as they speak, so they will live, because what you say you create. There is no innocent word. Every expression is an order you give to the universal substance, and the substance obeys. If you say, I don't have, it will answer accordingly. If you repeat, everything is hard, it will bend to your decree and bring you more difficulty. Not because it wants to punish you, but because the law does not distinguish between jokes, complaints, or negative affirmations. The law precisely fulfills what you command. Thus it is essential to watch your language. The rich soul speaks from gratitude, security, and the certainty of good. It does not deny appearances, but it does not give them power. Even in the midst of trials, it declares, this too shall pass. I am sustained by God. Everything comes to me in perfect order. Large sums of money come to me in expected and unexpected ways. I am guided, I am blessed, I am prosperous. And not only does it repeat these words, but it affirms them as if they were already true, because this is the language that frees, language that does not beg but recognizes, language that does not crawl but rises, language that does not describe the situation but proclaims the truth. A woman came to me distressed about her business. She said, every month I sell less, no one is coming in, everything is so bad. I listened to her with compassion and then asked, is that what you want to keep creating? She looked at me surprised. I said, change your words and you will change your results. I taught her to declare, my business flourishes, provision flows to me, I am surrounded by perfect clients. At first it was hard for her. She felt like she was lying, but she persisted, and within a few weeks, new faces, new orders, and new opportunities began to arrive. It wasn't magic. It was the creative power of her restored words. The words that bind are those spoken from fear, doubt, and resignation. They are words like chains. I can't. There's nothing. I'm trapped. No one helps. Everything goes wrong. And every time they are repeated, they are reinforced. Every time they are spoken, they become flesh. But the words that free are those spoken even when appearances say otherwise. They are words like keys. I am guided. Everything is resolved. I have everything I need. Money comes easily to me. God opens paths for me. Speak like a rich soul, not when you have visible riches, but when you decide to create wealth in the invisible realm, because the word creates first in the spirit and then in matter. As the wise one wrote, death and life are in the power of the tongue. What you pronounce with emotional power, that is what you choose to live. Be mindful also of what you say about others. Criticizing someone else's wealth is closing the door to your own. Envying, murmuring, or mocking those who prosper is telling the universe, I am not ready to receive. Instead, bless the abundance you see. Even if you don't understand it, bless it, because what you bless you draw nearer, and what you judge you push away. Every word is a creative act. There is not a single expression that does not leave its mark on the spiritual realm. That is why, even in the darkest moments, speak as one walking toward the light. Speak as one who has already received. Speak as one who trusts in the source. Because when your language changes, your atmosphere changes, and when your atmosphere changes, everything around you must change as well. Do not fear exaggerating in your affirmation of good. The world already exaggerates too much in proclaiming evil. Make language your ally, not your adversary. Train your mouth as a sacred instrument. May your lips become accustomed to praise, not lament. Let your voice speak every day words that uplift, words that free, words that invoke, because the word is power, and you decide every day whether to use it to bind yourself or to open the treasure chest waiting for you. Chapter 13, Your Heavenly Bank. The riches of heaven know no inflation, bankruptcy, or scarcity. Learn to deposit there. Men have placed their faith in earthly banks, in coins forged by human hands, in economies that tremble before rumors, governments, or wars. They have built their security on papers that lose value, on contracts that dissolve, on numbers that rise and fall according to the winds of the world. But the wise soul, the soul that has awakened spiritual knowledge, knows that its true treasure is not in visible vaults, but in the invisible bank of the Spirit. This bank does not collapse. It does not fluctuate. It knows no crises or inflation, and it does not depend on gold or interest. Its flow is eternal, and all who learn to deposit in it never lack. Jesus spoke clearly about this. Do not store up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up treasures in heaven. This command was not an invitation to live in poverty, but a call to invest in the eternal. For the spiritual treasure, once sown, manifests in the material world when needed, and always with perfect measure. Depositing in the heavenly bank does not mean the usefulness of earthly money. It means understanding that true sustenance does not come from the world, but from the source. It means living with confidence in divine supply, even when your pockets seem empty. It means acting with generosity, speaking with gratitude, and walking with certainty, knowing that there is an invisible account where each act of faith, each right word, and each elevated thought is a deposit. And how is this sublime bank deposited into? It is deposited with unshakable faith, with obedience to the law, with constant forgiveness, with giving without expecting, with gratitude beforehand. Every time you choose trust instead of fear, you are depositing. Every time you sow without calculating the return, you are increasing your account. Every time you affirm your good, even without seeing it, you are moving spiritual resources in your favor. I have known souls who, without visible fortunes, lived like kings, not by illusion, but because they knew their reserves were not on earth, but in heaven. And when they needed something, they called for it, and it came, not because they had manipulated the circumstances, but because they had credit on high. They had sown with their thoughts, words, and deeds, and the law, which never forgets, returned to them with interest. A man came to me trembling in soul. He had lost his savings in a bad investment. He said, "Everything I had is gone." I replied, "Not everything. If you have loved, if you have trusted, if you have helped, if you have affirmed, you still have spiritual capital that the world cannot touch. Withdraw from there." I taught him to pray not from desperation, but from certainty. I taught him to say, "My heavenly account is overflowing. I now call my visible good in divine order." And so he did. Soon after, an unexpected opportunity returned much more than he had lost. The world will tell you that security lies in possession, but the Spirit teaches you that true security lies in alignment. When you are aligned with divine law, when your life reflects spiritual order, the good seeks you. Doors open, needs are met because you have learned to operate from a higher plane. Do not fear if your earthly bank account empties. Instead, ask yourself, how is your account in heaven? Ask if you have been sowing words of faith or words of fear. Ask if you have given with joy or withheld with fear. Ask if you have affirmed your divine inheritance or lived as though you were an orphan of the universe. Every sincere prayer is a deposit. Every act of forgiveness is credit. Every step taken in trust is an investment. And when the time comes to need, it is enough to make a clean affirmation, a declaration for what has been stored to precipitate in the form of money, help, opportunity, or guidance. I have said before and I repeat now, supply never fails. He who has an account in heaven is never bankrupt, for God's bank does not depend on the earth. And the soul that has placed its treasure on high fears no loss, because it knows that what is essential is stored where nothing can corrupt it. Live as one who knows their wealth is spiritual. Speak as one who has already claimed their inheritance. Walk as one who has infinite backing. For just as the sun never ceases to shine because a cloud obscures it, your supply never ceases to flow, even if it is not yet manifested. Declare today, my heavenly account is full. My good has already been provided. I receive it now through expected or unexpected channels, and I give thanks because I am sustained by the eternal source. Then without effort you will see what is necessary appear, for you have stopped depending on man and have learned to live from the inexhaustible funds of the Spirit. Your bank is heavenly, and it never closes. Chapter 14, Gratitude, the key that turns the lock. Give thanks before receiving, as if you already have the supreme sign of faith. Gratitude is not a response. It is a force. It is not the final gesture after receiving something, but the sacred act that opens the way to receive. It is the master key that silently turns the invisible lock of the universe, and when done with faith, the good that seemed distant manifests. For those who give thanks before seeing, they have already taken possession in the Spirit. I have taught many souls who ask, affirm, and decree, but do not give thanks. They wait for something to happen and then say, "Thank you," and that order is reversed. In the spiritual realm, thanksgiving is not the consequence. It is the cause. To give thanks is to declare, "This is already mine, even though my senses have not yet confirmed it." It is to rise to the level where doubt has no place. It is to live as if you have already received, even though the envelope hasn't arrived, the door hasn't opened, or the table is not yet set. Anticipatory gratitude is faith in action. It is the highest form of certainty, because the one who gives thanks before receiving has broken the chains of time. They no longer wait in anxiety, but recognize from conviction. A woman who desired a decent home came to me in tears. She had prayed, affirmed, and asked, but every time she spoke, she said, "I still have nothing. Everything is difficult. I don't know if it will ever come." I took her hand and asked, "Have you thanked for that house as if it were already yours?" She looked at me surprised. She had never done so. I taught her to say every morning and every night, "Thank you, Father, for my perfect home in the perfect place with the perfect conditions in divine order." She began to do it, first as a game, then with more strength. Within 3 weeks, an acquaintance offered to rent her a house for a symbolic sum, a house that had everything she imagined. It was gratitude, she told me, and I replied, "It was your faith expressed as gratitude. Because when you give thanks without having seen, you declare that your faith is complete, and the law cannot resist a complete faith. Pure gratitude raises the vibration of the soul, cleanses the atmosphere, dissolves anxiety, and opens the heavens. But it is not enough to say thanks mechanically. The universe does not respond to empty formulas. Gratitude must come from the heart as a joyful, trusting, unconditional act. You must feel that you already possess that for which you are grateful. You must close your eyes and see it, taste it, smell it, embrace it in your soul, and then say thank you because it is already here. I remember a man who had to cover a large debt in a few days. He was paralyzed by fear. I asked him, "Have you given thanks for your debt?" He said, "How could I? I have nothing." I replied, "Exactly because of that. Thank him not as one who begs, but as one who has already received." I taught him to affirm, "Thank you, God, because this debt has already been settled by your invisible hand in peace and perfect order." He repeated it intensely every day. After 5 days, a business he thought was lost was resolved in his favor, and he covered his exact need. That is the secret. It is not about waiting to give thanks. It is about giving thanks to precipitate. Because the grateful soul does not live in lack. It lives in possession. The grateful soul does not doubt, does not complain, does not curse. It blesses everything because it knows that everything is working for its good. Even when it doesn't understand the paths, it gives thanks. Even when it doesn't see the way out, it gives thanks for the open door. Even pain, when thanked for, is transfigured because gratitude is not only for what is pleasant, but for what it teaches. Whoever gives thanks for the trial transcends it. Whoever gives thanks in the wait receives the revelation. Whoever gives thanks in the middle of the night sees the brightest dawn appear. Gratitude is light that dissolves the shadows, and not only do we give thanks for what comes, but for what already is: the body, health, bread, voice, the day, the roof, water, and the word. Every blessing recognized is a call for more blessings. The soul that gives thanks for little soon has more than enough, but the soul that ignores what it has will not know how to hold on to gold, even if it comes. I have taught many souls that by simply becoming grateful, they began to prosper because by giving thanks, they aligned themselves with the law of good. They placed themselves in the frequency of abundance, and abundance responded to them. Today I tell you, make gratitude your spiritual breath. Give thanks before, during, and after. Give thanks for what you have and for what is to come. Give thanks for the visible and for the invisible. Give thanks as one who opens a door, not as one who knocks to enter. Because gratitude is not supplication. It is inner possession, recognition, certainty. And that certainty is the key that turns the lock, and when it turns, the good enters without delay. Chapter 15. Opening the windows of heaven. The final lesson: living in a constant rain of blessings without fear, without limits, without doubt. The soul that has walked this path, that has sown pure thoughts, spoken with faith, forgiven deeply, given with joy, and expressed gratitude fully, finally reaches the summit of its spiritual consciousness, living with the windows of heaven open. And when that happens, life stops being a struggle and becomes a flow. It stops being a weight and transforms into continuous manifestation. It stops being a plea and becomes recognition. For provision is not an occasional event, but a permanent state when the soul is aligned with the principle. It's no longer about obtaining something that is missing, but allowing what has already been given to overflow. It's no longer lived from scarcity or hope in uncertainty, but from the peaceful certainty that everything comes, everything flows, and everything is in order. In the book of the prophet Malachi we find this promise. "Test me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out for you such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it." This is not a distant metaphor, it is a law, and this law is activated not by sacrifices but by understanding, not by external rites but by internal disposition. Living without fear, without limits, without doubt. Fear, limits, and doubt have been the three locks on the windows of heaven. While the soul fears losing, it will hold on. While it believes there is little, it will shrink. While it doubts the source, it will hesitate. But when these three dissolve in the light of truth, the floodgates open, and the blessing does not cease. I've known people who had no more than a coin in their pocket, but had broken the three locks. They feared nothing, did not feel limited, and did not doubt their provision. And I've seen how, within a few days, their lives transformed. Resources arrived, doors opened, help came. Because God doesn't wait for human conditions to act. God acts when the soul opens. Opening the windows of heaven is not an isolated act. It is a way of life. It is waking up every morning and saying, "Thank you for everything I will receive today, visible and invisible." It is walking as one who knows that the best is yet to come. It is looking at the future without fear. It is speaking with authority about good. It is blessing everything that happens, even that which is not understood, knowing that every act is part of the sacred flow. It is trusting beyond reason, loving beyond understanding, serving beyond retribution. And when you live this way, everything falls into place. Provision not only arrives, but stays. For the soul that becomes a clear channel of the Spirit does not only receive, it radiates. Wherever it goes, it carries abundance with it, not necessarily in the form of material wealth, though these often accompany it, but as an atmosphere. It radiates calm, certainty, possibility, and faith. It becomes a beacon for others, and as it becomes a blessing, it cannot stop being blessed. A woman who had lived for years in financial distress once told me, "I feel like I'm missing nothing now, even when I don't have everything." I replied, "It's because you've already opened the windows of heaven. Now you know that what is missing in form is on its way, because it has already been given in spirit." That is true peace, the peace of knowing that never again will we ask from lack, but will receive from awareness, because the universe is full. It has never been empty. The blessings have not been withheld, they were waiting for a soul aligned enough to receive them. No merit is needed, only openness. No struggle is required, only attunement. The key is not force, but faith, and that faith is not measured by emotional intensity, but by serenity, by that quiet certainty that does not shout, does not demand, does not despair. It simply knows it has seen beyond the veil and understood that everything is here, everything is now. Everything has been provided. From this height of consciousness, one looks back and understands the lessons. Fear taught trust, scarcity taught affirmation, doubt taught depth, the desert taught listening. And now, with the windows open, the soul can say, "Everything has served, everything has worked for my good, everything has led to this fullness, and this fullness is not the end, it is the beginning of a new life. A life where abundance is natural, where giving is joyful, where receiving is constant, where heaven is no longer a promise, but a state." Live then with the windows open. Let the good rain down, let the invisible gold flow, let the bread come without fail. Let love surround you, let peace remain, and may your life be the living testimony of this eternal truth. God is your supply. His stream is inexhaustible, and the windows of heaven are already open for you.